So what we're doing here is to make some carbon fiber rods that we're going to cut at one end, and we'll show you later, and then we're going to insert that in the broken tube on the drone. The end diameter of this thing has to be 19.5 millimeters. We started with 17 millimeters. Right now I don't know how much we're going to have to drape this. We started with spraying a release, and we used a lithium grease that we've been using for other plastic releases in the past. And then, just to ensure that it will release, we're going to drape a very thin fabric over it. We tape it one end first. So I'm going to drape it around. The worst that can happen here is that we can't get the carbon fiber off the stalk underneath here. Okay. And my partner's cutting the tape a little on the short side, but that's okay. And of course I cut the fabric a little on the short side, but that's okay. So now I'll tape that. This is not super critical, but the idea is that we do not want the carbon fiber to get stuck on the metal rod. And I don't think there is any way that that's going to happen now. So now, since the overlap is this way, we're going to drape the carbon fiber this way. In order to do the carbon fiber, we have a resin for the carbon fiber that we mixed 5-to-1. So in our case, we're using 10 grams of the one and 50 grams of the other. And we're going to mix it together, and we have tested this in advance. We have a 10-minute working time. By that time, we got to be done with whatever we're doing. We're going to make a mess on here a little bit, but that's okay. And after 10 minutes, this is going to heat up a lot, and at that time we will produce some fumes, so we'll put it outside by then. So anyway, we got 10 grams and 50 grams. We're going to mix it up and then stir it up, and then starting now we have 10 minutes worth of working time. This resin is quite interesting. It doesn't have the typical smell of an epoxy, but still, gonna watch it a bit, particularly when it starts to harden. It does heat up and it starts to smoke a bit. Make sure it gets well mixed, and this is the proper way to mix things. When we used a proper scale for this to weigh it out. It's far more accurate to weigh it than to do the volume. So 10 grams and 50 grams for 5-to-1. Okay, we have the properly mixed. We're just going to stir it up a little bit to make sure it's properly done. And then, as I said, this is low trial and error now. We're using a very soft carbon fiber fabric for this. Okay, so this is the carbon fiber we're going to use. This material is a little difficult to work with. We're still working with our 10-minute time frame, and there's no reason to stress here. We're just going to put this stuff on the best we can. Okay, we have enough there. We'll spread out. Then we're going to take the carbon fiber, we're going to roll it that way, right? So the problem now is going to be it's going to want to stand up at one end. And make sure you have paper available. This is not a glove thing. You're going to get dirty here. So if my partner can rotate the shaft at the other end, we are going to get it on here. And I'm going to clean my hands shortly thereafter. Okay, unroll it again. Make sure we get it started properly. Okay, try it again. And the problem here is to hold it there. I'm going to do that. Hold that, please. Okay. Roll it over a little bit more. Good, hold it there. Now drop it. Perfect. Okay, that went really, really well. Keep turning it. And now I'm going to hold it there please. Now I'm going to put more resin on to make sure we can tighten it a bit. We're going to make 2 of these. The issue is that if we make it too thick, I'm going to sand it down. But I like to have 2 templates for this, or two stock for this. The trick here is to tighten this a bit. Keep going. Keep going. Keep rolling. Okay, and then I'm going to move my fingers here. Keep rolling and tighten it a bit. Keep rolling. Keep rolling. Okay, that went really, really well. Now, I'm going to put, I think I have enough resin, but I'm going to put some more on. Okay. Now we are going to make an effort to cover this with a plastic so we can tighten it. So it has to go this way. Okay, so start it there and then drop it over the edge. Okay, now it doesn't matter if it gets some goop on top of it. Keep rotating. No, unrotate a bit. Same problem here, we're going to get it started properly. Okay, keep rotating. A little faster so we don't fall down. Perfect. Keep rolling. Keep rolling. Okay, perfect. Now you want to tape that in the middle first. Don't try to be finesse with this, just wrap it all around. And try to avoid to get your fingers on the goop. And then do one on the outside. And how are we doing for time?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. This is nice. Then we have time to do the other side also. Okay? You're getting glue on the... Okay? Don't just wrap it. Okay, and then go in between. In between. And then we're going to need more tape cut for us. Cut it a little bit longer. And a little bit of imperfection is okay. We take care of that when we sand it down afterwards. Okay, okay, perfect. We got the first side done. Now we're going to do the second side. Okay. I will say that was success. The second tube we're going to make a little bit shorter. They're both too long anyways. So same thing. I'm going to put some resin on. How are we doing for time?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. So we have 4 minutes before this is going to start to harden. Okay, rotate it please. Perfect. Now we wrap the carbon fiber. Okay, can you rotate it please? Can you hold that up please? Okay, rotate a little bit more. A little bit more. Let it drop. Let it drop. Okay. And keep rotating. Perfect. This is messy. Interesting, it smells good. Not overdo this inhaling of this, but it smells good. And then the challenge is, can somebody wipe my hands, please? Not with used paper. Wipe my hands, please. Okay, thanks. Keep it tight. Excellent. I put some more resin. How are we doing for time?
7 minutes.
Okay. Okay. This is good. Then get the plastic. Okay. Move it around. Okay. Drop it. Rotate. Excellent.
Really reef on that one, maybe.
Yep. Okay. That's okay. Now put the tape on.
Give it a good tug.
Yeah, it will look okay. It will. Okay. Good. Tape quickly. Then I can get some paper. Now I have 2 minutes to get this off my hands, and I don't want that stuff to harden on my hands. Gonna get hot. More paper, please. It's all like this.
Good thing of acetone.
I would say this has gone extremely well. And there's definitely a little bit of a prep of this afterwards, and we'll show you that. So this is the end for now. And then we continue with the second phase shortly.
8.5 minutes.
Excellent.
Looks like it tried to open up a bit there.
There's a channel in there. But that just might be the part that's being burnt away.
Is that it? I think you're free.
Yep, we're free. Resin.
It's not pretty,
No.
but it'll work.
Okay, so we're moving towards the next step of repairing the vision. And in the last section, we made these tubes based on what you saw in the last section, with the notion of sliding this tube into the broken pieces. This tube is slightly bigger than the inside diameter of these tubes. The inside diameter of these is 19.5 millimeters. The tube that we made is 20 millimeters, so slightly bigger to make sure it's a good fit. And then we scored it to make sure that when we put this thing in, the cable we're allowed to do. And we're going to make sure that the cable is off the horizontal. So we're going to make sure that the repair has the maximum strength up and down. Okay. We also produced a couple of jigs that you will see during this repair. Initially though, we don't use the jig. Initially we're going to put this tube into the stationary part in here with a 5mm epoxy. Then we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to carefully and rather quickly, because it's still using a 5mm epoxy, do the portion of this tube where the arm's going to slide into, and then we will attach the 2 jigs, and you'll see that when we get to it. There's a jig for holding the arms absolutely in place, and then to make sure that this side is absolutely parallel to the other side. So that's a very simple jig. And we made the jigs out of hardwood, so there's no risk for them to to lose dimensions over time. Softwoods like pine and spruce and fir tend to be too soft for that kind of work. Okay. Okay, folks. Now the step is to glue the tube with a 5mm epoxy into here. So we have our 5mm epoxy. We're going to mix it up. And the key to this is just to not make a mess. And it's going to take very little epoxy for this. This is 5mm epoxy, so you have to be somewhat effective and not dilly-dally too much. It's a very simple process here though. We're going to do them in 2 stages. Make sure it's mixed properly. We could have used longer drying epoxy, but the key here is that the strength is the tube and the 5mm epoxy is plenty fine. So I'm going to apply it to the tube. The trick here too is not to lay it on too thick because we don't want to create a mess here. The whole intent of this when we're all done is to make sure that the repair looks like it never happened. Okay. So remember, the epoxy now is not what we use to set the carbon fiber. We use the special epoxy for that. Okay. So we're in good shape over time here. Just gonna make sure it's thin. Okay. If you do a lot of epoxy with this kind of epoxy, you want to make sure it's well ventilated. This is kind of nasty to breathe in. So now I'm going to insert the tube, and as you see there is a cutout for the cable, and that went really well. But just going to make sure we don't have any spill. Actually, I'm going to pull it out a little bit and apply a little bit more at the end. Make sure it really fills in nicely. It doesn't take much for this, but you don't want to have too little. As long as you work fast, so you have this set cleaned up before it sets. It looks very nice. And then I'm going to clean it up with a tissue. Make sure it's clean. Get some more tissue. Okay. When this is done, it definitely should be stronger than the original arm. When we have watched other YouTube descriptions of this, this sounds like a common problem with addition. And most of the other examples we've seen, the breakage is in the very same place. And it's just after this aluminum nut at the end here. So it's in place. Dig it around a little bit, make sure it's clean. Getting some of my fingers here, but it's really important here we don't have anything spilling out here because that means the other tube is not going to go fully in. And the fully in is really important to fit this thing in the jig. The cable is loose, it's not stuck, we're in good shape. Okay, so the phase of putting the tube into the stationary part is done. And now the issue is to put glue onto here and get the loose arm on, and then to put the jig on, clamp it down, and then the second jig on to make sure this set of engine holders are the same as on this side, so they're parallel to one another. Okay. So again, we're going to go in with the epoxy. It's just simple 5-minute Loctite epoxy. Probably makes a little too much, but too much is more than too little. It makes it way too much, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so we're gonna mix it, and just keep in mind that we have 5 minutes, which is plenty of time for this little operation. Really important to mix it well, and that's why I'm putting a little too much in. you put a little squirt down, it's really hard to ensure that it's properly mixed. Okay, it's properly mixed. The next stage now is to put it on the oh, there it is, to put the glue on, or the epoxy on the exposed arm. Okay, and again, it's important not to make a mess. And remember too, there may be a future time when we may have to take this apart, so we don't want we'll never get this apart, but if we ever break it again, we'll make sure we don't glue the electrical to anything. So it has to be moved. If my assistant can help me flip it over so I can have access to the other side, let's flip it all the way up like that. Good. Again, it's easy to mess up here. Make sure you don't get the glue on the tube, on the electrical connector. Please flip it all the way around. Okay, like so. Again, we're doing fine for time. It's just that I make sure that we get the stuff we're supposed to go. And this is put together. We're going to try to get things cleaned up as possible. Okay, thank you. And you don't need to put too much on here. You might just a little bit more up in that area. And then we'll put this on. We got a little too much on here, but we'll remove some of it. Flip it upside down, please. One thing we have learned over the last couple of years when you're into drones, I don't know if you remember the old MacGyver series of programs, you have to become a little MacGyver to do this. It is what it is, and don't get into drones if you're not willing to fix things. Okay, it's going in well?
Yep.
Okay,
It's seated.
it's seated, and now we're going to put the jig on it. The jig has a little protector on that side to make sure if we have a little bit of a goop on the other side that doesn't get stuck to the jig. So we put, if you can help me lift it, I put the jig on. Don't panic every time, we're still doing fine. The jig is in, and now we're going to get a clamp first on the jig is in properly. Then I put a little bit of pressure on that side, and then here, and this is why we put plastic underneath here to make sure if we have a little bit of a sloppiness, it doesn't matter. The jig is really, so then it goes down, really precisely measured, and we're going to show in a separate section. If you can rotate this now. Yeah, this way. We're now going to put an arm on between the two to make sure the two legs are absolutely, so if you can loosen that jig a little bit. Perfect. No, don't remove it. Leave it where it is, but don't tighten it. Okay? This is really important to make sure that the two legs are rotated the same amount. We're still doing fine for time. It's always a little nerve-wracking when you're working with glues that dry fast, but what would life be without silicone, duct tape, and epoxy? The handyman's best friend. Okay? If you're Canadian, you've heard with the red green show. If you're American, imagine people with suspenders on that can fix everything with duct tape and silicone. Okay? Let go, please. Now clamp it. Don't overdo the clamping. So what we've done now is to ensure that the two arms are absolutely parallel to one another. We have ensured that the two arms are lining up here, and we're going to show the jig later on how we made sure we have that. As far as I'm concerned, now, besides some cosmetics now to make sure that the little finesse little thing about the crack look good, we're done. I'm now taking it apart, and now we're just going to verify that indeed we don't mess the electronics. If that would happen now that she's not turning all the motors, we're not gonna lose any sleep over that. That basically meant that we're gonna open up that side and make sure that we didn't lose any connectors. With losing the connectors, there's two kinds of connectors. There's the connectors that are there's an antenna in each end that is soldered, and then there's the connectors to the motors, which are plug-in pins. So we may have pulled one of those out.
So we're going to do a systems check now and see if all of our electronics are working. So we're going to actually power it up, transform it out of travel mode, and then we will power it down and connect the camera and reconnect it and make sure that everything is working as it should. So I've got the controller powered on, and I've got a phone connected to it. And as you can see, everything seems to be sitting fairly level, so that's a good sign. I'm going to try powering up the motors. I'm going to power this down. Takes a second. Okay. So the gimbal corrected itself, no problem, and we're going in to the software. And we have full camera view and full gimbal control. So everything seems to be working correctly. Getting no errors whatsoever on my end here. It's reporting that we're safe to fly. Of course, because we're indoors, it's saying there's no GPS connection. But it is trying to view satellites, so I'm not too concerned about that. We'll do a full system test outdoors, but it appears that our repair has worked. Yay! Okay, so we've got the drone outside here now. We're going to do our first real lift. So you saw yesterday that we did the systems check to make sure everything was lined up. It's all good to go, so here we go. I'm just waiting until we get a full GPS lock. There we go. We're now safe to fly with GPS. We have 11 satellites. It's recording the home point and powering up. Gonna let it transform. Got a bit of a breeze there, and it's handling it quite well. I don't see any shuddering whatsoever. It's very stable. It's handling it very well. We have windy conditions, and it is handling it without any issues. We've got quite windy conditions, and in this courtyard it's not ideal. So I'm going to transform it and land it. It's going to be unstable while it transforms. We've got a lot of swirling winds here. But I'm going to call that a success.